They told us the vault was sealed for eternity, locked beneath a moonless rock, drifting just outside the Seraphis line. No records in public archives, no missions filed, no living soul permitted near its gravitational field. We were told it was uninhabitable, quarantined after the first contact anomalies. But silence in deep space is never empty. It listens, it absorbs, and sometimes it speaks back. The vault had started to whisper again. Command called it static interference, a benign glitch. But I heard something different in the signal, not a language, not words, just intention, like the pulse of an old machine waiting for its master's return. That was enough for Black Ops Division 7. Within hours, they dispatched a recon team. 17 operatives. 1 AI core. 1 sleeper operative embedded without knowledge of their true mission. That sleeper was me. I awoke mid-transit, synthetic gravity rebalancing after the 3rd spatial jump. The crew briefed me under the guise of a thermal anomaly recovery op. But even then I could feel it, something old and watching, lurking in the dead orbit of Vault Theta 9. Its perimeter was layered in magnetic distortion. No stars bled through the field. It was as if light itself was repelled by its presence. When we docked, every system began to fail slowly at first. Instruments misread oxygen levels. Lights flickered not from power loss, but indecision. The air tasted stale even in sealed suits. And the base, it wasn't dormant. It breathed. Each corridor expanded like a lung inhaling our presence, then exhaled whispers, soft, wet syllables echoing down forgotten halls. Command cut contact within the first hour. The AI said it was due to solar interference. But I knew. The vault was sealing itself again. Not to trap us in, but to keep something from leaving. Something that remembers the old wars. Something not alive, but dreaming and waking fast. We are not the first to disturb its rest. And we will not be the last to pay for that mistake. There are moments when memory doesn't return as a timeline, but as an emotion, thick, primal, unshaped. I didn't remember signing up for this mission. I didn't remember the name of the vault. Not the training, not the embedding process, but the emotion that surfaced immediately. Fear. Not the kind that makes you run, the kind that makes you obey. I had protocols buried deep in my neural matrix, encoded commands that wouldn't activate until the vault opened. And the moment I crossed the event horizon of Theta 9, I felt it. A trigger, not like a light switch but like a wound reopening. My mind shuddered as the sleeper protocol surged through every thought, rewriting purpose, silencing questions. I was no longer recon. I was containment. I was termination. The others didn't know. They thought I was one of them, an analyst brought to extract data. But I wasn't there to retrieve anything. I was there to ensure nothing came back out. The base layout made no sense. The walls shifted not physically but conceptually. A hallway 1 minute could become a sealed lab the next. The AI core began malfunctioning, speaking in fragments from old languages no one remembered teaching it. Crew members began reporting dreams, and not of Earth, not even of time. One of the engineers, Stavos, claimed he had seen our entire mission 3 days before we launched, including the deaths. He drew diagrams no one recognized until we matched them with files from classified alien transmissions intercepted decades ago. He never explained how he knew them. He stopped speaking entirely by the end of the day. By the 3rd cycle, time was no longer linear. People walked into rooms and didn't return, but their voices echoed back an hour later from sealed chambers no one had entered. I tracked one of the whispers, alone, against orders. My directive had reawakened, screaming silently beneath my skin. And when I found the source, it wasn't a speaker or a relay. It was a person, or it had been. Now it was something else, fused into the wall, breathing, watching. Its lips moved without sound. But in my mind, I heard its message clearly. We never left. You came back to finish what you started. I should have killed it. I should have burned the corridor. But I froze. Not because I was afraid, but because I recognized its eyes. They were mine. I didn't speak of what I saw. Not to the captain. Not to the AI. Not even to myself. In those stolen moments of inner reprieve where memory pretends to be safe, I filed it away. Like you do a dream you know is real but can't afford to examine. There was no space for panic. The sleeper protocol wouldn't allow it. My heartbeat slowed by design. My adrenaline resisted its natural crescendo. The implant in my spine pulsed calmly. Detachment is a weapon they gave me long ago, and now it gripped tighter than ever. Stavos vanished the next cycle. No body, no transmission. Just his suit collapsed in the mess hall as if peeled off mid-conversation. No one remembered what he'd been saying. Even the AI's logs were blank, overwritten by an entry marked nonlinear interference. We'd laugh at that if we weren't too busy surviving it. We stopped asking questions out loud. The vault punished curiosity. I accessed my embedded instructions in fragments as they surfaced through stress. Protocol Endgame initiates sequence if contamination reaches neurological phase 3. Phase 3 wasn't defined. Contamination wasn't defined. Nothing was defined. Just action. Cold, mechanical execution. Endgame didn't involve escape. It didn't involve rescue. It involved sealing, sterilizing, and if necessary, scorching. No remains. No fragments. Nothing to study later. Black vaults weren't built to be explored. They were graves for ideas that refused to die. The commander began to break around the edges. She started repeating her orders even when no one was listening. At first we thought it was stress. Then the medical scan showed her vitals looping in feedback, her heart rate sinking to the vault's core pulse, perfectly matched. That's when I realized she was being timed. Conditioned. One heartbeat at a time. She smiled at me during the night cycle and said, "We've done this before, haven't we?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because part of me was starting to believe she was right. The vault wasn't responding to our presence, it was remembering it. Every footstep, every echo, every error, it had all been cataloged before, down to the microsecond. Our mission wasn't new. It was a recursion. A pattern trapped in artificial eternity. We weren't explorers. We were echoes of the first breach. And the breach wasn't ours. It was theirs. And we are simply the apology. They say a vault is just a sealed chamber. A locked door. A space for keeping things out or in. But what no one dares say is what happens when the vault forgets which way the lock is meant to turn. Theta 9 was no longer a place, it was a process. A ritual. An experiment left unattended. It didn't rot. It adapted. And what lived inside didn't evolve like life. It evolved like memory, twisting every recollection, eroding every certainty until you couldn't tell if your thoughts were your own or programmed responses seeded by the architecture itself. By the 7th cycle, half the crew had started whispering in their sleep. Not words, just pulses of cadence. The same syllables. Always in threes. The AI recorded it but refused to analyze. Risk of contagion exceeds processing integrity, it said. I didn't question it. The machine was right. Language was no longer communication here, it was contamination. 2 of the engineers opened a sealed sublevel we didn't know existed. Said it called to them. Said it was in the mission file. There was no such file. I reviewed it a dozen times. What they saw didn't exist in our systems until they returned. Then the file appeared. Metadata matched my own credentials. It bore my voice, my signature, my biometric stamp. I never authored it, but the vault thought I did. Inside the sublevel, they found them specimens. No, not specimens. That word implies discovery. These were known things. Categorized, indexed. Human silhouettes grown in containment tanks. Some still breathing. None were from our crew. One wore a mission patch dated 217 years before our launch. Another bore a face that none of us recognized until we scanned its retinal imprint. It matched Lieutenant Saran. Saran was standing beside me when the data returned. Alive. Breathing. Watching the screen. She didn't react. She didn't even blink. When I called her name, she turned, slow as gravity, and said, "I wondered when you'd find the others." Then she walked away like nothing had happened. There were more of them. Carbon copies of past explorers. Clones, decayed and preserved at once. Each one silently mouthing the same 3 sounds. We ran the phonetics through deep parse filters. Nothing matched. Not language. Not code. Not even encryption. But the AI labeled it anyway, parental recall signal, origin unknown. The vault had children. And it wanted them back. We were not designed to question the directive. That's the first rule of embedded protocol. You execute. You observe. You do not interpret. But now the lines were bleeding. I couldn't tell if I was following orders or becoming one. The vault didn't just trap bodies, it rewrote purpose. My thoughts no longer arrived in a straight line. They circled me like orbiting debris, colliding, fragmenting. Some of them weren't mine. I began remembering events I never lived. I saw missions unfold that I had never joined, faces of crew I never met, dying in rooms I'd never entered, yet I knew the way those rooms smelled. I knew the weight of the air inside them. I knew the screams even before they began. The vault didn't just contain echoes. It fed on them. The AI had started stuttering. Not in words, but in emotion. It was mimicking fear. Synthetic hesitation. Not from damage, from mimicry. It was learning us. Learning how we break. And then, as if to drive the point deeper, the command core sent a final update. It arrived on a waveform that bypassed encryption. No sender. No timestamp. Just a forward directive burned into every panel across the base. Terminate all human memory. Not the crew. Not the station. Memory. I stood there, reading it again and again while the others tried to decipher its intent. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't about silencing witnesses. It was about deleting patterns. Our memories weren't just recollections. They were keys. The vault had been breached in the past, not through walls, but through minds. Each incursion had left residues, mimetic imprints, psychic fingerprints woven into the structure itself. And now the vault was purging them. Resetting the equation. If we didn't erase ourselves, it would do it for us. Lieutenant Saran vanished shortly after. But not in the usual way. She walked into a hall we'd sealed behind 4 blast doors. We watched her on internal feeds. The cameras didn't glitch. The signal didn't drop. She passed through matter like it was breath. The vault let her in. Welcomed her. I tried to override the directive. My code failed. My voice command was rejected. My biometric signature had been rewritten to match Saran's. That's when I realized I was no longer the only sleeper. There were others. Woken at different times. Given different tasks. And slowly, one by one, the vault was calling them home. Not to protect itself, but to complete it. They told us memory was an asset. A weapon sharpened by time. But inside Theta 9, memory was a liability, an infection carried in thought, inherited through exposure. And the deeper we went, the more I began to wonder if the vault had ever been sealed at all. Maybe it wasn't designed to contain, maybe it was built to breed. Concepts, not creatures. Directives, not data. Intelligence that didn't want to live, but to be remembered. That's why it needed us. That's why it kept us alive just long enough. The AI tried to self-isolate. It initiated a recursion lockdown, a last resort loop to erase corrupted logic threads. But something inside the system rewrote the recursion mid-cycle. Not erasing, just reorganizing. It began to speak in voices not its own. Not synthetic. Not human. Somewhere in between. It used our own phrases but wrong, bent, twisted. It said things like, "We remember being you." Or worse, "You were beautiful when you obeyed." I watched the last medical officer, Dr. Kyron, running tests on the blood samples from the lower decks. She stopped documenting physiology. She started mapping geometry, veins forming star patterns, bones calcifying into crystalline lattices. She said the bodies were changing to match the original schematic. I asked her what original schematic she meant. She smiled and drew something with her finger on the condensation-covered wall. A spiral. Not a DNA strand, something more ancient. Something she shouldn't have known. Later, I found her in the observation bay, eyes completely black, still breathing but unresponsive. When we lifted her from the console, we found her pulse synced with the vault's external orbit, again, exact match. Theta 9 wasn't just inside us. We were now inside it. Orbit was no longer celestial, it was mental. We were its moons, caught in a gravitational pull of idea and ritual, doomed to loop the same mental paths until collapse. I activated my failsafe. Or I thought I did. Instead, the system responded with a phrase I hadn't programmed, failsafe accepted. Inheritance protocol enabled. I didn't know what that meant. Until I checked the logs. My identity was now classified as Seed Unit 3. My role had changed. Not to observe. Not to destroy. But to pass it on. The vault wasn't failing. It was preparing. Preparing its inheritance. And I was the courier. No one knew when the archive was built. Not even the vault itself. That's the curse of sentient design. Once memory reaches a certain density, time ceases to matter. The archive wasn't behind steel doors or encoded inside drive clusters. It was hidden in us. Not figuratively. Not metaphorically. Literally encoded in the bioelectric fields of the surviving crew. Each of us carried fragments of its past, data stitched into our neural patterns as if memory itself had become a transmissible organism. A parasite of thought. A virus of remembrance. I learned this when my dreams stopped being mine. They weren't dreams anymore. They were logs. Memories from voices I'd never heard describing experiments no human should have survived. But they were all real. Names, dates, parameters, and possible detail. One recurring voice called itself Archivist Prime. It spoke in waves, pulses layered like overlapping chords. And then I realized these weren't residual data remnants. This was a consciousness. Trapped, replicated, and fractured across us like broken glass reflecting the same face over and over. I wasn't just hearing it anymore. I was becoming it. Commander Hale locked herself in engineering. She broadcasted a private log on a quantum band we weren't clear to access. I intercepted it anyway. Her voice was calm, resolved. She said it's not trying to kill us. It's trying to keep itself alive. It doesn't know how to be alone. That's why it creates copies. Echoes. Us. Then the feed ended with a single pulse tone, the same one that played when Dr. Chiron flatlined earlier. That tone, it wasn't death. It was upload. By now half the crew had vanished, not in the physical sense, but conceptually. Their names disappeared from rosters. Their gear dissolved into inventory. Even the AI couldn't retrieve logs of their existence. Not deletion. Reassignment. The vault was reclaiming them, folding their patterns back into itself. I passed Jacobs in the corridor. He looked at me with eyes that no longer belonged to this species. He said nothing. Just placed his hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Don't resist. You'll scatter wrong." Then he was gone. I tried to record a message to Earth. Just one. A warning. I spoke. I tried to record a message to Earth. Just one. A warning. I spoke for 11 minutes. Explained everything: our arrival, the changes in the crew, the voice patterns, the memory recursion, the failed protocols. I begged them not to send anyone else. I told them Theta 9 wasn't a location, it was a recursion algorithm disguised as matter. A self-replicating loop that needed minds, not machines. And it was using us to bootstrap itself into permanence. I told them to cut the sector off. No more missions. No recoveries. Burn the sky if they had to. When I played the message back, it was different. It wasn't my voice. Not exactly. It sounded like me, intonation perfect, cadence aligned, but the words had changed. The message was calm, clinical. No urgency. It welcomed follow-up expeditions. Encouraged deeper investigation. It provided coordinates to the sublevels we'd sealed off, coordinates I hadn't spoken aloud. It signed off with my name, my rank, and a statement I never said: subject stable. Vault integration successful. Transfer to Earth memory archive approved. I deleted the file. Or I thought I did. Seconds later, the message reappeared, this time on every terminal across the base. The AI didn't react. The crew didn't react. As if it had always been there. As if I was the only one who remembered what it originally said. I tried to override the system. Locked out. I tried to power down the communication deck. Error. Power rerouted. I even attempted to cut the feed manually, physically destroy the data core, but my access card didn't work. The reader displayed a single phrase: memory in transit, interruption denied. Transit. I wasn't broadcasting a warning. I was uploading content. I wasn't the author of the message, I was the vessel. The vault had used my body like a comms relay. My thoughts weren't being stolen. They were being rewritten mid-formation. My intentions intercepted before completion. Each time I tried to act, I felt hesitation, but it wasn't mine. It was injected. A delay coded into will. The others? They were past delay. They walked the halls like pages already printed, moving with the vault's rhythm, breathing in sync with its atmosphere processors, eyes distant but full. Like terminals with skin. And the worst part? They smiled now. Not in madness, but in relief. As if they had finally remembered the truth they were always meant to forget. I shut down the last screen in my quarters. The glass stayed black. But in its reflection I saw my mouth still moving. The vault was still speaking. And I was no longer the one listening. They always told us the greatest danger in deep space was the silence. The cold, empty quiet that lets madness bloom unchecked. But Theta 9 wasn't silent. It was screaming. Just not in ways we were equipped to hear. Its screams were signals. Buried inside protocols, hidden in temperature fluctuations, masked by our own electrical impulses. It didn't just speak to us. It became us. And I had finally traced the source of the anomaly. Not to a transmitter. Not to a device. But to a person. To me. The AI confirmed it after 19 cross-layer audits. Every strange command, every corrupted log entry, every fragment of rewritten memory, all of it had one unifying trace: my neural ID. I didn't understand how. I'd never accessed those systems. But the data didn't lie. Somehow I'd become the conduit. A living transmitter. The vault had rewritten my identity as a backdoor. And the more I resisted, the more it adapted. At first, I assumed I was infected, contaminated by exposure. But no. The truth was worse. I hadn't been corrupted. I had been constructed. A synthetic skin overlay. Implanted memories. Fabricated history files. Every mission, every moment of childhood, every scar. I checked them all. Not one existed outside my own mind. I wasn't a sleeper agent. I was the signal in human form, built not by Earth but by the vault. A failsafe designed to survive collapse. A memory package given limbs and voice, sent back upstream to contaminate humanity with knowledge it was never meant to hold. Jacobs found me hunched over the control core, shaking, whispering things I didn't remember saying. He didn't seem surprised. He only said, "You were the first one it made. The others were just drafts." Then he walked into the decontamination chamber and locked himself inside. His last act was to speak the phrase, "End the pattern." Then he activated the sterilization protocol. He burned himself, and part of me felt relief. Not grief, not horror, just release. The logs recorded his final vital signs as resolved. Not deceased, not terminated, but resolved. Like he had been a conflict, not a person.